Drake recently became the most streamed artist ever. Why? How? How did we let this happen? The man has been on a consistently dull and bland run of albums for nearly a decade, garnering the most amount of malice towards an artist who hasn't really done anything wrong that I think I've ever seen. For All the Dogs, his most recent album, released October 6th, is possibly the most forgettable album to ever be made. The only standout song is 8 AM in Charlotte, and that song sounds nothing like the rest of the project. Drake whipped up an EP in like 3 weeks, and it sounds exponentially better than any of his output in the last decade or so. A week after this album, underground rapper Mike released his 7th studio album, Burning Desire. This album is a masterpiece, alright? He employs the Mad Villainy method of album structure, rapidly firing 1 to 2 minute tracks with maybe a verse or two, but keeping it very concise. This levels out the motion of the album and keeps it very consistent. This allows for him to just kind of mess around with different ideas at the same time. The way he distorts and splices samples, it creates this very nostalgic and melancholy experience, and it feels tailor-made to the exact degree he wanted it. It feels like this is a man in total creative control, doing exactly what he wants, exactly how he wants to do it. This is an album. Not this, but this. Okay, I'm done hating on Drake now. Moving on. Pop, mainstream, big albums can have good structure. They can tell stories. The balance between pop hits and creating a world within the album itself, it's a difficult balance, but Lemonade does exist. Indie projects have an immense amount of freedom to do as they please. The concern is never on how to make the big bucks. It's about doing whatever you want. If you want to release a 2.5 hour long album where no song sounds the same, you can do that. And it might be one of the best albums ever made. I can't figure it out yet. I don't know how to feel about this thing. The ability to get abstract and employ whatever methods of production a person can imagine, it's wonderful, and it opens the door to truly unique things. Music is an art form, and to say that concept albums or albums where it's more about the experience than actually being able to go back and bop your head to it, saying that's pretentious is a false claim, okay? Some things are made to be endured once. It works the same as an experimental movie or a creepy painting, okay? Shut up, stop calling me a nerd. The Talking Heads is one of the few bands to do what they do. Every album gets arguably more bizarre sounding, and David Byrne's singing gets more and more idiosyncratic. They just create a very unorthodox and textured sound to their music. Remain in Light is one of the best rock albums, period. It's an insane album. The way they fuse African music with their own pop rock sensibilities morphs it into a very singular and colossal piece of art, which I don't think I've ever seen before. And no, I don't know what that means, but the point is, The Talking Heads is a great band. Yeah, this guy goes crazy, alright? I have no idea what leads to making beats like Rainbow Six, Flame, PTSD, Garbage Pail Kids, but I mean, good for him, you know? Yeah. There is nobody else producing music the way Barrington Hendrix over here is. The man can flip between pretty soothing R&B oriented music into just absolutely ear-shattering industrial sounds. The use of field recordings and just weird audio implementations in general is so fascinating, from a super washed out remix of Travis Scott's Butterfly Effect, to the sampling of an ASMR video on Rock and Roll is Dead, to the sped up version of a Britney Spears song on Lean Beef Patty. The guy spins some of the weirdest possible things into music, and it might seem questionable at first. You think to yourself, like, oh, is this really going to be good? How could he possibly turn this into a real song? And then he manages to flow effortlessly over it, and I don't even know, like, it's so weird. Bjork illustrates how one can make abstract pop better than anybody else. I guess I'm using indie kind of vaguely here, but I don't think the average person is going to be walking around listening to Pluto, you know? She's made like 5 perfect albums, but my favorite of hers is undoubtedly Vespertine. Similar to the prior artist, she implemented lots of field and home recordings, contorting these natural and household sounds into what she calls microbeats. The way she twists and stretches her voice feels ghostly. She strikes a certain chord that's so full of emotion and inner conflict. She manages to turn her voice into the central part of the instrumentation. It's a very internal album, and is one of the quintessential winter albums in my opinion. She navigates this ethereal sort of space so excellently. Yeah, it's a magnificent album, you know? It's just a perfect example of this bizarro production and the ability to use the voice as the driving force behind something. Go listen to Vespertine. It's a crazy album, you know? Another album that captures winter for me in a special way is The Glow Part 2. I'm not as familiar with the Microphones' other work as this. This is their most famous album, but it is their most famous album for a reason. It's a very strange album. The bulk of it is composed of short tracks, some aggressive, some calm, some bordering on ambient. Phil Elverum, the man behind the masterpiece, contorts the audio in pretty incredible ways. He does a lot of simple stuff, but it makes a big difference on how the album feels as a whole. The low submarine-esque gong sound that gets emitted every few tracks, or the uncomfortable amount of silence bookending the majority of them. The layering of guitar audio to create this swirling sensation at certain points. It's easy to lose yourself in this lo-fi soundscape he sculpts. He recorded everything on a tape recorder, and bends the fuzziness of this process into its own faded world. It's the audio form of a memory. There's something truly inexplicable about this thing. It does things to me, man. It does. I think this album would lose its magic if it didn't have so much of that background noise and the weird discrepancies in the audio. It's a very messy sounding album at points. Some tracks such as Map or My Roots Are Strong and Deep sound like someone ripped a disc out of a broken computer that's been lost in some storage container for several decades, you know? It feels archaic at points. It produces just one of the most profound albums I've ever heard, you know? And it proves that, hey, sometimes a bad sound might be better than a clean one, you know? I'm just saying. I think it's very genuine when something is recorded in just a profoundly bad way, you know? The Glow Part 2 is what many would call a quintessential sad guitar man album. And the most important aspect of a sad guitar man album, beyond the guitar and the man, is the medium through which it is recorded. Okay, that's not really true, but just pretend it is, alright?
Bars 3.
Elliott Smith is a beautiful man who made beautiful music, no doubt about that. The best descriptor for his stuff is just absolutely wistful. Either or feels like a man bellowing out his sorrows through a radio, and it's a special kind of thing. The same could be said for Nick Drake, who gleamed as much beauty from those 6 strings as humanly possible. The old tape recording process makes this sort of sound radiate in a special way. It makes it feel warmer and cozier than if you just recorded it on, I don't know, his iPhone 15 Max Plus Pro, now only $1,200. Hip-hop, at least the sample-based parts, is another genre that legitimately benefits from poor quality sound. The act of splicing and reconfiguring decades-old vinyl pressings and layering other pieces on top of that, it creates a sort of audio collage. When you look at projects like Mad Villain, you've got the stuff JPEG Mafia is doing, the College Dropout, the strange, kind of unnerving era of stretched and pitched down soul music that Earl Sweatshirt went through a couple years ago. Think of what these would sound like if it weren't glued together by vinyl static and the arduous medieval process through which pre-digital hip-hop had to be made. It would be more boring. It gives it depth, it gives it punch, it gives it grime, it gives it... Portishead is a crazy band, alright? I'm sure other music sounds similar to them, but I don't think anybody has done anything to this level. Portishead uses a mixture of live instrumentation and samples and weaves them together through tape compression and the worst quality vinyl possible. Their music feels like a relic, the ancient soundtrack to some faraway action movie. Beth Gibbons sings in a ghostly tone with very melancholic lyrics and meshes beautifully with the densely packed audio sludge that she sails through in their 3 equally excellent albums. They illustrate the power and emotion that a concept as abstract as poor audio quality can elicit, assuming you combine it with the right sound in the first place, obviously. There's also this weird form of low-quality production that has really only existed in recent years. If something is made in FL Studio or GarageBand, you know, cheap musical software that most people on average could buy and use, people like me who don't, you know how to make music, especially if it heavily uses stock plugins. You can kinda sorta tell. And each their own, but I think this is endearing and it makes the musical effort more engaging in a strange way. It's more honest. Visions is an excellent pop album, but it's immediately evident that Grimes made it in a 3-week period. The manic energy undeniably soaks into the final product. It feels very programmed at points, and it does generally come off as a slapped-together album. But when I say this, I want to put it in a positive light, because something about that process and that feeling, it just makes it more engrossing. Like you're looking at someone just going ham as fast as they can, just putting everything, giving it their all, even though they don't have the time to really fine-tune that all. I don't know, it's a strange thing, but it's effective in spite of the inherent hindrance one would expect it to be.
Warlord
we all lost, but we all lost, trying to find home next.
I just wanted to take a moment to appreciate the fact that so many people have made music on so many different levels and so many different ways. I picked some pretty basic things here, you know, but I mean, literally, there's more music than you will ever hear. There is so much stuff to be found, it's honestly frightening. The best piece of music might be the next Frank Ocean album, if such a thing would ever happen. Or it might be some lady in New Zealand who recorded herself playing a ukulele in her bedroom. I don't know, man. It's absurd. It's beautiful how art is able to be made at any scale by any person, no matter how it's done or to what degree of professionalism. The passion and the person behind it is what makes the thing the thing. And in the age of technology, it's so easy to just start creating and do as you want. It's beautiful. Merry Christmas, and sorry for not following through on that funny little community post I made 5 months ago. I was taking a nap, you know how it is. I hope you enjoyed. Share your favorite artists, you know, all that good stuff. I can't stop listening to the same Travis Scott album on repeat. Okay, bye.